Greetings, ladies and melogents, and welcome to this latest narration of Wearing Power Armor to a Magic School. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 48, Confessions. This was one of those times where my helmet was doing me a disservice, because the expressions currently forming beneath it were more than enough to convey all of my feelings on the Venerian's accusations. I had to compensate for my helmet's encumbrance by just slightly over-exaggerating what little emotive ability I had left, namely, through the use of my words, tone of voice, and most underappreciated and overlooked of all, body language. Because of me, I responded indignantly, leaning my upper body forward whilst gripping both armrests tight. "You're telling me that this was somehow my fault?" I paused, cocking my head to the side before letting out a loud chuff. "All right then, I'll buy it." I leaned back just a bit, alleviating but not fully releasing the tension in the air. "I'm going to assume that you have some damn good reasons behind that leap in logic, or at least what sounds like it, because if you're just spouting nonsense for nonsense sake, then you're a heck of a lot more foolish than what I took you for." I let that hang in the air for a while, before shifting forward again to reapply the pressure. "Now, I know you have your personal reservations against me, and I know I probably stand against a lot of what you inherently believe in by the virtue of my mere existence, but I also know you consider yourself a player in the greater game, and no player worth their metal or gilded titles is going to be spouting out rehashed rhetoric at a time where their very fate is on the line. Because I highly doubt that you're the type to double down on the crap that you've been spouting when all the chips are down. You seem smarter than that, Eleanor. So tell me then. Explain to me how and why you were ordered to go full Fahrenheit 451 because of me." To Eleanor's credit, he didn't budge an inch as I brought my full weight to bear. In fact, he seemed as composed as he was when he effortlessly flipped his persona back at the armory. There was a hint of fear in his eyes, though I couldn't tell if that was because of me or because of this whole mess he was now embroiled in. Regardless, after giving my tirade, it deserved airtime in silence. He eventually did respond. "You are correct in distinguishing rhetoric from the practical concerns of the great game, New Realmer." His eyes sharpened further, trying his best to maintain eye contact through the opaque lenses. "This is an important distinction to make, and one that even those amongst your ranks seem to struggle with at times." There it was again, another glimpse at Eleanor's courteous side, or at least the closest thing to courtesy that I'd experienced from him so far, alongside the help with the chair. "Suffice to say, New Realmer, my benefactor was under a similar pretense when considering his options with you. For rhetoric would dictate that you have nothing to offer and thus nothing to fear from, at least as it pertains to your interactions with the library." He paused before gesturing correctly to the pouch I had my card stored in. "Yet reality says otherwise." The Venerian paused, taking a deep breath as he leaned back against his chair with a satisfying plump. "In short, my benefactor acted in the way he did out of a universal motivator even you would understand. A motivator so primitive, so primal, that even the most stalwart of souls will find it difficult to act any differently under its vice grip." Eleanor leveled his eyes my way once more, his gaze remaining nothing short of heavy and severe. "Simply put, my benefactor acted out of fear, New Realmer. He was terrified of the threat you posed and mortified of what you could do if given the opportunity." I opened my mouth to respond, if only to ask about where exactly this fear stemmed from, but it only took me a few seconds to realize just where Eleanor was going with this. "For you hold within your hands an information disparity the likes of which has never been seen in untold eons. You hold within your arsenal a weapon far greater than any magical tome, artifact, or crafted omens. You hold an information advantage, New Realmer. One that has the potential to incur a deficit never before seen with the library. A deficit which could be used to exchange for secrets the Nexus believes no adjacent realm has the potential to trade for, let alone a new realm. For this is the first instance in history where another power possesses the potential to upend the Nexus's stranglehold on the information deficit within the library. And whilst not all the information traded with the library is sensitive enough to pose a threat if learned, there are some which have the potential to. It was these highly specific pieces of information that I was tasked with burning to prevent the potential of you trading highly sensitive information of your own to learn them. because ultimately my benefactor believed that you hold within your helmeted head information of equivalent enough weight and category to secure transactions which could not be tolerated. So that's what it was. Fear. A fear of a new, completely alien force, upending an established order that had no equals or peers to speak of. It was the first time the Nexus had truly experienced something that even the UN truly lacked. A contemporary of comparable parity. Another truly foreign power that could rival its primacy. Manathayria was clearly smart enough to see that, and smart enough to act upon it, yet he still maintained an impenetrable facade even when pressed with the truth. There was a lot more going on underneath the surface than I could have ever imagined. So what exactly did you burn? I don't remember. What? The contract has protections afforded to certain actions, clauses, and discretion. I wish not to dwell in this matter, New Realmer. Eleanor let out a long sigh, one laden with specks and bits of soot that blackened the table in front of us. His eyes languished on it, as it did on everything else he's spoken on thus far. Strangely enough, the Venerian sooty breath triggered yet another light bulb in my head to light up, and another question that sorely needed answering. I gotta ask, Eleanor, how'd you do it? I finally managed out. It's the library we were talking about here. Fire couldn't have just burned away. It's not just fire, New Realmer, the Venerian interrupted indignantly, as if he was offended by the fact that I called his dragon's breath a mere fire. It is dragon's breath. There it was. What's more, it wasn't just dragon's breath that did the killing blow. Wait, what? I was just as curious as you were about the mechanics of this, New Realmer. I was also under the impression that the library was something more than it was. As such, I made my curiosities known to my benefactor, and considering just how highly specialized my role was for this mission, he granted me a small glimpse into just how this attack was possible. To my knowledge, dragon's breath is known to the library, and thus the library has the appropriate means of countering its effects. That much is obvious. The library, however, is vulnerable to what it doesn't know, and the Nexus has within its arsenal secrets that can, and clearly did, take advantage of this weakness. As such, it wasn't just my flame that struck the blow. I was given an unknown substance I was instructed to consume. It changed my fire, turning it into something even I don't recognize. Eleanor clenched up at that, flinching as he mentioned this mysterious substance, grimacing all the while. What's more, the books you see aren't simply books. The library, the entire construct, is an entity. The books are the physical manifestations of this ethereal entity's memories, ones that we can interact with. What I'm trying to say here is that even the library is fallible, New Realmer. Just like the Nexus is fallible, I interrupted with a snide remark. That point is a matter of contention, Eleanor diplomatically shot back, as we remained locked in a surprise staring match for a few tentative seconds. Right, I managed out with a sigh, breaking the tension in the air. So who was it then? Who's this mysterious benefactor behind all of this drama? The same man that has seemingly become our peer group's collective enemy, New Realmer. Eleanor shot back with a semi-sarcastic bluff. It didn't take me long to realize just who it was Eleanor was referring to. Manathayria, I offered, but instead of conciliatory nod, all I received was a slow, sarcastic clap in response. Very good, New Realmer, very good. I ignored that dismissive jab, pressing on as if it never happened at all, but not before shooting back a similar jab of my own. Well, at least I wasn't the one dumb enough to sign a contract with the guy. Eleanor, surprisingly, had nothing to say in response to that, but his disgruntled face was clearly against a bit of truth. Our Black Robe professor really has been working overtime the past few days, huh? I continued. He has been focused squarely on you, New Realmer. Perhaps you should be honored for garnering the undivided attention of a mouthpiece of the Privy Council, Eleanor continued, once more in that darkly sarcastic tone of voice. These brief dives into sarcasm, as annoying and passive-aggressive as they were, felt more real than any of the interactions I'd had with the Venerian thus far. It genuinely felt that this was the real Eleanor, underneath all those layers of pomp, circumstance, and projected lackadaisical indifference. It almost felt as if this sort of passive-aggressive back and forth was just typical to what he expected of a conversation. I'd be flattered if I wasn't the center of his attention, to be honest. I sighed back, garnering a single, barely distinguishable dismissive snicker from the blue thing. But that's beside the point. I have more questions, but I'm expecting you to keep answering, Eleanor.
By all means.
The blanket, is it?
A one-of-a-kind magical artifact capable of completely hiding its user's presence. Why, yes.
Who gave it to you?
Manathayria.
And what was it for?
To keep an eye on you and your misadventures, or rather, that was the intent before the library debacle. It was very much useful for the whole escapade as well, given the information on its existence and function are likewise unknown to the library, on the count of being withheld.
Okay, I managed out, and not wishing to disrupt the unexpected free flow of information, pressed onward to take advantage of the Venerian's surprising compliance. And the debacle at the armory?
Manathayria's attempted making you sure you demonstrated the capabilities of your weapon in full force, without purposely holding back.
Eleanor responded succinctly, almost too succinctly.
The potential of inciting a major social faux pas that could later be taken advantage of was also something of the secondary goal.
And the null? I pressed further.
I learned of its significance to you from the Black Robe Professor himself.
Why choose it over anything else? I narrowed my eyes further.
Isn't it obvious? It was meant to trigger a response, and out of all the creatures I could have projected, it was the most likely to do so.
The fact that he'd been so open about inciting a response from the very recent trauma was equal parts infuriating, as much as it was a breath of fresh air and frankness. Right, I sighed loudly in response. So what's with the burnt letters?
As much as I hate to admit it, this was purely the result of frustration over my circumstances, and a means of venting that frustration in the most candid way possible.
I narrowed my eyes at that, and whilst I could understand that explanation for the assembly letter, the mystery charred-out letter underneath the Venerian snuggle pile was a different matter entirely.
For both letters?
Both. The second letter was one addressed to all students regarding the library, but I couldn't make out the first one was. What was?
That is a matter not up for discussion, New Realmer.
The Venerian put his foot down, which made the contents of the mystery letter all the more intriguing, considering how he'd been weirdly open with everything else so far.
It is a personal matter. I hope you can respect that, as I'm under the impression that we are currently discussing matters pertaining directly to the current circumstances plaguing our peer group. The letter is decidedly not one of those matters.
So it wasn't your contract with Manathayria or anything?
No, the holder of the agreement is the one in possession of such things.
So how'd you know that you were free from it?
It's an inherent feeling. I can't expect you to understand these sorts of things given your
Eleanor turned around, and for the first time in the entire conversation, he finally broke eye contact to gaze at the air in indignant disbelief.
Your self-purported, self-supposed mannerless status.
And on the topic of Manathayria, tell me why you did it. Why'd you sign a pact with that sleazeball? The question garnered a visceral reaction from the Venerian, as he sighed, sinking deeper into his seat, claws running to the back of his armrest.
I believe I had alluded to that enough, but if I need to spell it out, New Realmer, then I shall for the sake of this forthright exchange. To put it bluntly, the man played the oldest tactic in the book. He extorted me when the choices I had were to sign or consign myself to oblivion. I'll let you guess which choice I made, New Realmer.
Another silence suddenly fell upon us both, as I let out a sigh of my own, groping a bit of my helmet where my forehead should have been. Eleanor, I have to ask.
Yes?
The Venerian perked up, seemingly happy to be moving forward from a recent tangent, but no less jaded. You're not suddenly being open about all of this for no reason now, are you? You're not doing this all for free.
I believe that much was obvious from the start, yes.
So what do you want? I spoke curtly, cutting straight through the fat, to which the Venerian seemed more than ecstatic to reciprocate.
A guarantee, New Realmer.
What sort of guarantee?
A guarantee to defend the honor and integrity of this peer group.
I leaned forward once more, making it known that I wasn't about to take his wishy-washy attempts to ennoble legalese. And by peer group, you mean yourself, I quickly clarified.
The two are inseparable,
the Venerian spoke with a sly grin.
As the protections afforded to one extend to all within its ranks.
He paused before making a final play.
And isn't group cohesion that we need to survive the hostile conditions we find ourselves ensnared in?
It was at that point I decided to push even further, calling the blue thing's bluff as I laid my cards down. What's stopping me from simply letting you burn, Eleanor? I stated plainly, and uncharacteristically coldly, causing the Venerian's cheeks to immediately drain of color. What's stopping me from letting this all play out the way it should tomorrow? Eleanor didn't respond for a few seconds, which only served to emphasize his answer when it did come true.
Uncertainty, he responded cryptically,
He looked away, as if trying to physically hide from the very real possibility of his doomed fate.
Were to be forcibly removed from the ranks of this group, another would have to take my place. For a peer group must maintain its numbers, even if it must be fated by drawn from an alternative pool.
The Venerian's ultimatum quickly became clear, as the prospects of getting someone new slotted into the group was, troubling. For how difficult would it be for the Academy to simply shove someone like Uven Croven into our group? Someone who was fully bound by the spell-binding ritual, reduced to a literal puppet. Venerian had his drawbacks, but at the very least, he wasn't a mindless zombie. If this conversation showed me anything, it demonstrated his ability to, at the very least, save his own skin. Which brought me to a final talking point that I felt could serve to really dig into the blue thing's psyche.
What do you even want me to do about this situation, Eleanor? I just assumed that you had a golden library card that
I could just talk to the library and sort this whole mess out.
Perhaps, I simply assumed.
But wouldn't that go against the Nexus's wishes? I pushed further. It looks to me that in order to rectify the situation in your favor, I have no choice but to go against the current Nexian agenda. And wouldn't that be something that you, a Nexian loyalist, would absolutely loathe?
That is a highly reductive way of analyzing the situation, Numroma.
My point still stands. Why would you have me subvert the institutions and the authorities of the Nexus?
Because the practical concerns of my well-being trump any pretenses of loyalty-bound decorum, Numroma.
Eleanor spouted out with frustrated vitriol.
I wish not to observe the chivalry if it results in my demise, especially if that demise was catalyzed by non-Nexian actors and propagated by flawed and failed representatives of the Nexian system.
There it was, what I expected to hear, but it still wasn't enough, at least not yet, especially since there was the first cracks in the Venerian's indoctrinated worldview. I let out a sigh before deciding to end things off here, at least for now. Right then, I was under no false pretenses over what this current dynamic was, and given the Venerian's track record so far, I wouldn't just give in on the whims of his demands even after he'd revealed everything there was to know about this little escapade so far. I needed to fact-check his claims before I proceeded, and since I was in the driver's seat of these negotiations, I had every right and ability to let the Venerian sit and reflect on his actions for a while as I did so.
That'll be all.
What? The Venerian snapped back, seemingly blindsided by that answer. As I said, that'll be all for now, Eleanor, I repeated without a hint of hesitation.
Is this a refutation to my request?
Eleanor managed out nervously, as it was clear that this was his turn to be asking for points of clarification. No, it's me putting this all on hold, at least for now, at least until I can get some second opinions on this whole thing.
But you have my word.
Your word doesn't really mean much right now, Eleanor, I stated bluntly. You'll find that humanity, at least as we are right now, values evidence-based practices and objective mythology when it comes to committing to deals and decisions such as this. I'm merely going to be conducting independent cross-sectional studies in an attempt to corroborate your claims in order to make the best informed decision on this matter. I didn't know why, but it felt natural to be using Piero and Academo speak against Eleanor right now, especially after all the dense noble speech that had been thrown my way thus far. It never occurred to me until now, however, how it seemed to be an almost mirrored version of High Nexian's decorum-laden speech, except whilst the latter was filled with fluff for fluff's sake, the former was dense and filled with eclectic jargon speak for the sake of getting the point across as dryly as possible. I began making my way out of the room, picking up the remnants of the burned letters whilst doing so, as I left behind a dazed and confused Venerian. No sooner did I arrive at the door did I feel a tug of my hand, however. It was a forceful one that beckoned me to stay.
Numroma, please.
I craned my head, despite not needing to do so, to my review camera.
I had no other choice, and now I have nowhere else and no one else to turn to. I understand full well the irony of the situation, but please.
I could hear the breakdown of his facade crackling in the form of squeaky paint breaths that just barely held back the voice on the verge of tears. I didn't know if I was looking at crocodile tears, but something told me that I wasn't. Still, I had to be smart about this. I couldn't just take everything at face value. Just stay put for now, Eleanor. I managed out through another sigh. I'll be back. I can promise you that much for now. Dragon's Heart Tower, level 23, residence 30, living room, local time 1700 hours. Emma Booker. Relaying all there was to be relayed to the likes of Thassia and Thalman took a little while. Most of that time was taken up by Thalman's constant jabs at Eleanor's moral character and his personal integrity, with a few moments of punctuated by Thassia's sharp and analytical questions. In the end, while we couldn't fully corroborate all there was to corroborate regarding Eleanor's story, certain elements that actually mattered were more or less confirmed as legitimate, most notably the peer group system, which is why we all came to the same begrudging conclusion.
The Academy will waste no time in replacing Eleanor with a far more agreeable agent to service their own needs. They will have learned from the lessons of the disgraced Malteroy and simply opt for a pliable duplicant instead of any contract-bound free agent, Thassia concluded, garnering a constant dulcet growl from Thalman all throughout her short yet informative analysis. This works elegantly in their favor, utilizing the Venerian as a convenient scapegoat and replacing him with an unquestioning agent all in one fell swoop.
Which means the only means of preventing this outcome is to temporarily allow our interests, Thalman begrudgingly spoke, practically shaking in place, for the alternative would be unacceptable. Okay, I managed out with a sigh. All right then, we'll see what we can do. But the Eleanor situation doesn't change our main objective. In fact, we might be able to kill two birds with... I paused, my eyes immediately darting to Thassia as I corrected my course midway. Save two birds with one net, I managed out sheepishly, garnering a questioning glare from Thalman and a look of incredulous confusion from Thassia. What I'm trying to say is that we should get going to the library, I managed out, looking at the two for confirmation. Thassia was quick to nod, but Thalman gazed straight towards the corridor leading to his dorm.
I think it would be prudent if I stayed behind to keep an eye on the Venerian, he announced.
With a nod between the three of us, Thalman began pacing towards his dorm, whilst Thassia and I finally resumed the course for the library. The train station Academy for Magical Arts en route to the library, local time 17:15 hours. Emma Booker. We arrived at the checkpoint with quite a bit of attention, as a small crowd of students seemed to be loitering around the place, either in an attempt to cross the bridge or simply to pass the time. The latter group seemed to be waiting around for some juicy drama to occur, if their whispers were any indication.
I count 25 attempts so far.
5 counts of my father will hear about this, and 20 counts of throwing around worthless names in hopes of getting through.
I swear, the announcements of the library's temporary closure has attracted all sorts of personalities who wouldn't even consider coming here otherwise. It's all about faux exclusivity. You make anything universally accessible and no one bats an eye. You close it, even temporarily, and the attention seekers and egoists will flock to test their connections. Oh, look, another one. Oh, that's the first year, the one in the armor. Quite the eccentric, I heard, but what can you expect from an Aberdeen new realmer trying to make their mark? Shh, she's arriving. The peanut gallery finally shut up as I stopped just around the checkpoint's inspection booth. The same elf from before emerged, looking no worse for wear as he looked me up and down as if offended by the fact I'd returned a quarter of a day later. You lot again, he managed out with what I could only describe as a snarky, nondescript British drawl. Not too bright, are you? Has the Dean not made the situation clear enough for you? He continued, as I allowed this to go on for just long enough before I pulled out my trump card. Thassia clearly noticed this and gave me the side-eye as if to tell me just to get it over with. The Dean has made the situation very clear to me, sir, I responded snarkily, refusing to clarify further. Oh, has he now? The man chuckled, before leaning in uncomfortably close. Then off with you lot, then. Go on, he shouted loudly, eliciting more murmurs from the gathered crowd, still looking on from afar. I am afraid I have no intention of leaving, sir. My intent is to cross the bridge. I gestured politely to the gargoyle-filled pathway, as I intend on using the library services today. This seemed to be enough to elicit an indignant huff from the man,
as he turned around to raise his hand, signaling a gargoyle, only to crane his head back to be met with a face full of library card. The gargoyle stopped at its tracks, and so too did the murmurs, as the collective attention of the entire open-air outcropping landed on me and the card between my fingers. As I said, the Dean has made the situation and my inherent privilege as a patron of the library abundantly clear to me, sir. I continued without skipping a single beat, causing the elf to all but lock up in complete and utter disbelief. He slowly and tentatively began reaching out a finger to touch the card, which I promptly pulled away from him for obvious reasons. "Trust me," I began. "You don't want to do that." With a wordless look of understanding, the man silently gestured for the rest of the gargoyles to give way, as the veritable army of stone and creatures that had occupied the first half of the bridge took flight, allowing me the freedom to cross. "Access granted, Madam Booker." The man nodded once. "Madam Booker, now let us not cause a ruckus and let this be over with." With no more words exchanged, I crossed the bridge without any issue, and after crossing the halfway point, the EVI once more started picking up chatter from around the checkpoint. The crowds were going wild. The library. Emma Booker. This wasn't the same place I entered just a few days ago. In fact, part of me thought I'd walked right into a trap or some portal to an even darker dimension than the Nexus, given the sheer whiplash of the change of internal design. Gone was the wide expansive stadium-like space of the library's reception, and gone were the nondescript fake windows that allowed in the otherworldly bright white light. In place of the solid blocks of white and ornate panels of wood were layers upon layers of cramped, tight, and claustrophobic cobblestone. The walls, the floors, and even the roof were all entirely replaced by varying cuts of this lifeless grey facade, interspersed with the occasional dark accenting of obsidian and basalt. The place looked and felt more like a dungeon or some sort of medieval castle or outpost. The fact was further hammered home by the loud shuffling of what I could only describe as pieces of plate mail armor rattling against one another. I was expecting the grand entrance of something akin to a saw car or one of his autonomous knights, or perhaps some sort of Renaissance age automaton. Instead, what emerged around the corner incited an opposite reaction to the fear and intimidation that everything was building up to. In fact, all of it melted away as I felt my heart being practically tugged out of my chest, and in a good way, as the being that rounded the corner was indeed clad in plate mail, complete with a helmet and visor. But instead of standing an intimidating 10 feet tall, he instead stood just over a foot in height. "Halt!" A familiar squeaky voice emerged from within the fun-sized suit of quadrupedal armor. "Who goes there?" It continued, but stopped halfway as a small black snoot emerged from the tip of the helmet before pointing directly towards me. "Get that, Emma Booker!" End of story. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Bushmaster 177, HenryTheRed, Casper Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon W.R.E, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.